The one small piece of porcelain does the regulators, and then aroma keepers, a filter, and even a pouring guide. No electronics, no moving parts, no complicated engineerings, just smart design. And that's exactly why people are still using it centuries later. Because good design doesn't become outdated. It simply keeps working. One of the first questions people ask when they see a Gawain is this: where's the handle? It seems like such an obvious thing to add. As after all, the bowl gets hot. Wouldn't a handle make it easier? Actually, not really. And once you understand why, you'll see that leaving the handle off was a very smart design choice. Let's imagine someone adds a handle to this bowl. Now think about how you would pour. You'd naturally hold it like a coffee mug or a teapot. Simple enough. But now you've lost something important. A control. With a Gawain, your hand isn't just holding the bowls. Your fingers are also controlling the lid. That tiny movement changes everything. You can adjust how quickly the tea pours. You can control how much tea comes out. You can make a fast pour for one tea, or a slower pour for another. It's a level of precision that's difficult to get from a handled cup. When you switch from jasmine tea to black tea, or from oolong to pu'ers, well, you're tasting today's tea, well, not yesterday's. There's another benefit that's surprisingly practical. A handle always favors one side. The left-handed or right-handed. A Gawain doesn't care. As anyone can pick it up. As anyone can learn to use it. No adjustment needed. It's one of those small details that makes the design feel incredibly universal. So is the missing handle a disadvantage? Not at all. It's actually part of what makes the Gawain work so well. So sometimes the smartest design isn't about adding more. It's about knowing what you can remove. Less really can be more. Now let's look at the whole set. Because a Gawain isn't just one piece. It's a three. So the lid, the bowl, and the saucer. And at first, it almost feels unnecessary. Why not make everything into one piece? Now the answer is simple. Each part has a completely different job. We've already talked about the lid. It keeps in heat. It traps aroma. It filters the leaves. And it helps control the pour. That's already doing a lot. The bowl is the brewing chamber. Notice how wide it is. That wide opening gives the tea leaves plenty of room to expand naturally. As they open, you can actually watch the process happen. You can see the color of the liquor change. You can judge how quickly the leaves are opening. You know exactly when the tea is ready. Nothing is hidden from you. You're not guessing. You're observing. For tea lovers, that's incredibly valuable. Now look at the saucer. People often assume it's just there to make the set look elegant. But it's much more practical than that. Well, the saucer protects your hands from the heat. It gives you a stable base while pouring. It also protects your table from a hot bowl. Something so simple makes the entire experience much more comfortable. Again, well, one small piece, multiple functions. What's fascinating is that this design hasn't really changed for centuries. Not because nobody tried to improve it, but because it already works remarkably well. When a design solves its problem this efficiently, well, there isn't much left to change. Over time, people also gave these three pieces symbolic meaning. In traditional Chinese culture, well, the lid came to represent heavens, the bowl represented humanity, and the saucer represented earth. So together, they became known as the three powers. It's a beautiful cultural interpretation. But here's the important thing. The symbolism came later. The original design was practical. People needed a better way to brew tea. The philosophy followed. Well, the function came first. So here's a question. If we have electric tea makers, smart kettles, automatic brewers, and all kinds of modern equipment, why do tea professionals still use something this simple? Well, the answer is surprisingly straightforward. A control. A Gawain gives you complete control over every part of the brewing process. You decide the water temperature. You decide how long the tea steeps. You decide when to pour. You watch the leaves open in real time. You adjust every variable yourself. No machine is making those decisions for you. That's especially important when you're working with high-quality tea. A premium tea changes from one infusion to the next. The leaves open gradually. The flavor evolves. Sometimes just 5 extra seconds can completely change the cup. With a machine, you're following its program. With a Gawain, you're responding to the tea itself. And that's a completely different experience. Another reason professionals love the Gawain is its versatility. Think about how many different brewing tools people own. The one teapot for black tea, another for green tea, a different one for herbal tea, maybe another for oolongs. A Gawain doesn't need any of that. The same bowl can brew almost every loose-leaf tea beautifully. A green tea, a white tea, a yellow tea, a oolongs, a black tea, a pu'er. Well, the technique changes. Well, the tool stays the same. Well, that's incredibly efficient. And maybe that's the biggest lesson this little bowl teaches us. The best tools don't try to do the work for you. So they help you do it better. So the Gawain isn't brewing the tea. You are. It's simply giving you the control to get the very best out of every leaf. Here's something I find really fascinating. The basic design of the Gawain hasn't changed much in over 300 years. The bowl, the lid, Though this is saucer, though that's still the standard. But depending on where you go in China, you'll notice small differences. Not because one version is better than another's, but because people drink tea differently. Well, the design adapts to the people using it. Take Sichuan, for example. Now, tea is part of everyday life there. People sit in tea houses for hours. Though they're talking with friends, or reading the newspaper, or playing cards, is watching people walk by. Now, tea isn't rushed. Oh, it's meant to last. Because of that, their gawins are usually larger. The walls are thinner. They cool down more quickly, making them comfortable to drink from throughout the day. They're practical, relaxed, made for everyday use. Now travel to Fujian's. Well, the atmosphere changes completely. Fujian is famous for oolong tea and gongfu tea brewing. Here, precision matters. People use smaller gawins. They brew with more leaves and shorter infusions. As every pour is carefully timed, and every second affects the flavor. These gawins are often a little thicker, helping maintain a stable brewing temperature during multiple infusions. It's a completely different style of tea making. The same tool, the different purposes. Well, then there's Kyasin. If you've ever watched a traditional Kyasin tea ceremony, you'll notice how deliberate every movement is. No, nothing is rushed. Nothing is accidental. Well, their gawins are designed for consistency. Well, the size stays fairly standard. The balance feels natural in the hand, as everything is focused on producing the same excellent cup again and again. It's almost like using a precision instrument. And then we have modern Taiwan's. Taiwan kept the traditional idea but simplified the appearance. Many Taiwanese gawins have cleaner lines, softer colors, and a more contemporary style. They're designed to fit naturally into modern homes, offices, and tea studios. A traditional function, modern aesthetics. It's a great example of how good design evolves without losing its original purpose. Different places, different habits, different styles, but the core design never changes. Because the original idea still works. Now, let's talk about the mistakes almost everyone makes the first time they use a gawin. And don't worry. If you've done one of these, you're definitely not alone. As I think we've all made them. The first mistake is holding the bowl itself. It's the most natural thing to do. You see a bowl, so you grab the bowl. The problem is it's full of boiling water. Within seconds, your fingers start getting hot. Your grip becomes unstable. Pouring suddenly feels awkward. Instead, hold the saucer. That's exactly what it's there for. The saucer stays much cooler. It gives you a more secure grip. And pouring becomes much smoother. One small adjustment, a huge difference. The second mistake is constantly lifting the lid. People are curious. They want to check the leaves. They want to smell the tea. They want to see what's happening inside. But every time you completely remove the lid, heat escapes. Aroma escapes. The brewing environment changes. You don't need to keep opening it. Trust the process. Leave the lid in place. When you're ready to pour, simply slide it slightly forward. That's all you need. The third mistake is opening the lid too far while pouring. I've seen this happen so many times. People lift the lid almost completely off. And then, tea leaves start pouring into the cup. The flow becomes uneven. Sometimes the tea even splashes. Instead, keep the opening small. Just enough space for the tea to flow through. The lid becomes your filter. The leaves stay inside. The pour stays smooth. Once you get the angle right, it feels incredibly natural. As after a little practice, you won't even think about it anymore. And here's the funny part. Most people think using a Gawain is difficult. Honestly, it usually takes less than 10 minutes to learn. After that, it simply feels normal. Like learning to use chopsticks. At first, it seems impossible. Then one day, you don't even notice you're doing it. So why are more and more people outside China starting to use a Gawain today? As after all, we have electric tea makers, automatic brewers, temperature-controlled machines, tea capsules, smart kettles. Technology has made brewing easier than ever. So why go back to something so simple? Because people aren't just looking for convenience anymore. They're looking for a better experience. Today's tea drinkers want to taste what makes each tea unique. They don't want every cup to taste the same. They enjoy experimenting, trying different temperatures, different brewing times, different leaf-to-water ratios. The Gawain gives them that freedom. Nothing is predetermined. Every cup is your own decision. People are also so simplifying. Instead of buying 5 different brewing devices, many discover that one simple Gawain can brew almost everything. Less equipment, less clutter, more flexibility. That's a philosophy many people appreciate today. And then there's something technology can't really replace. The ritual. Making tea with a Gawain slows you down. For a few minutes, you're not checking your phone. You're not answering emails. You're simply paying attention. Watching the leaves open. Smelling the aroma. Listening to the water pour. It's a surprisingly calming experience. Maybe that's exactly why so many younger tea drinkers are falling in love with it. Not because it's old, but because it offers something modern life often doesn't. A chance to slow down. So here's the biggest takeaway. The gay one isn't still around because people are trying to preserve history. It's still around because it's genuinely good design. It solves real problems. It removes unnecessary parts. It gives you more control instead of less. And even after hundreds of years, it still does its job beautifully. That's what timeless design looks like. As if you've never tried brewing with a Gawain before. I hope you're curious enough to give it a chance. As it might look simple, but sometimes the simplest tools teach us the most. And once you brew a few cups, you'll understand why generations of tea lovers never stopped using it. Thanks for spending a little time with me today. As if you have any questions about tea, brewing techniques, or different kinds of Gawans, drop them in the chat. As I'd love to answer them while we make another cup together. So see you next time, and until then, enjoy your tea. In Chapter 3, The Zisha Teapot, Why Tea Lovers Around the World Are Obsessed with It. More than just a teapot. And today we're talking about one of the most iconic tea tools in China, Zisha Teapot. If you've ever searched for Chinese tea online, you've probably seen these small clay teapots. They don't look flashy. They aren't covered in gold or decorated with colorful patterns. Yet some collectors are willing to spend tens or even hundreds of thousands of dollars on a single teapot. So what makes them so special? Why do serious tea drinkers love them? Why is Yixing the only place in the world famous for making authentic Zisha? And does a Zisha teapot actually make tea taste better? And today we'll answer all of those questions using history, science, and real demonstrations, without complicated terminology. By the end of this live stream, you'll understand why this small clay teapot has become one of China's greatest cultural treasures. Well, let's begin. The beginning of Zisha, the story of Gong Chun. As every great invention has a beginning. For the Zisha teapot, that story starts over 500 years ago during China's Ming Dynasty. The man most people recognize as the founder of Zisha teapots was named Gong Chun. Before his time, people already brewed tea in porcelain, metal, or ceramic vessels. They worked perfectly well, but they were simply containers. Gong Chun had a different idea. He spent time observing nature, the texture of old tree bark, weathered rocks, mountain forests, and the quiet beauty of simple things. Using local clay from Yixing, he handcrafted a teapot unlike anything people had seen before. It wasn't perfectly smooth. It wasn't heavily decorated. Instead, it felt natural, warm, and alive. People realized that a teapot could be more than something you brewed tea in. It could be a piece of art. It could reflect nature. It could even express the personality of the person who made it. That philosophy has stayed with Zisha for over 5 centuries. Even today, when people buy a handmade Zisha teapot, they're buying something that connects craftsmanship, nature, and daily life. Why only Yixing, the geological secret behind Zisha? Now here's the question almost every international tea lover asks. Why is everyone talking about Yixing? There are plenty of countries with clay. People make pottery all over the world. So why can't other places simply copy Zisha? The answer begins millions of years before humans even existed. So around 300 million years ago, the area we now call Yixing was covered by an ancient sea. Over an incredibly long period of geological change, layers of sediment were compressed, transformed, and enriched with minerals. What eventually formed wasn't ordinary clay. It became a unique mineral-rich rock that would later weather naturally into what we know today as Zisha clay. This clay contains a very unusual combination of minerals, including iron, quartz, and clay minerals, in proportions rarely found elsewhere. But here's what really matters. When fired at high temperatures, authentic Zisha develops an incredibly fine porous structure. Think of it like millions of microscopic air pockets throughout the clay. These tiny pores allow the teapot to breathe. Now that doesn't mean air is flowing through the pot like a sponge. Instead, these microscopic pores help regulate heat, moisture, and aroma during brewing. As a result, tea tends to stay warm longer, aromas develop more fully, and the flavor becomes smoother and more balanced. Now, this is one of the biggest reasons experienced tea drinkers love Zisha. It's not magic. It's materials science. Another fascinating feature is that different layers of the Yixing Mountains produce different kinds of clay. Now, just like different layers of rock produce different gemstones, different depths create different Zisha clays. That's why you'll often hear about three classic types: a purple clay, red clay, and dual clay. Each has its own color, mineral balance, and brewing characteristics. Because the best original ore is limited and tightly protected today, authentic Yixing clay has become increasingly valuable. You can imitate the shape of a Zisha teapot anywhere in the world. But recreating the exact geological material is another story. The three classic types of Zisha clay. Let's make this a simple. As if you're shopping for your first Zisha teapot, these are the three names you'll encounter most often. A purple clay zinni. This is the classic choice. If someone says Zisha teapot, this is usually what they're talking about. Its color ranges from deep brown to dark purple. It's balanced, versatile, and works well with almost every type of tea. A black tea, a oolong tea, a pu'er, or even darker roasted teas. Because it retains heat well while allowing steady airflow, it's often recommended for beginners. If you only own one Zisha teapot, purple clay is probably the safest choice. As you continue using it over the years, the surface gradually develops a soft, natural sheen from handling and brewing tea. Now, tea lovers call this the living finish. No paint, no polish, just a time and use. Red clay Juni. Next is red clay. Its color is much brighter, often a rich reddish-orange. This clay is naturally denser than purple clay and usually has finer pores. Because of that, it heats up quickly and captures aroma exceptionally well. The tea with strong floral or fruity fragrances often performs beautifully in red clay. Many premium oolong teas are brewed this way. Authentic Juni is also much rarer than purple clay. It shrinks significantly during firing, making it much harder to produce successfully. That higher difficulty is one reason genuine Juni teapots often cost more. Duan clay's dualani. Finally, we have Duan clay. Its colors range from cream and beige to light yellow. And instead of looking polished or dramatic, it has a calm, earthy appearance. Many people love it simply because it feels warm and natural. Compared with the other two, Duan clay tends to be slightly more breathable. That makes it an excellent choice for lighter teas like green tea, white tea, or lightly oxidized oolongs. Its goal isn't to intensify flavor. It's to preserve freshness and delicacy. So here's the easiest way to remember all three. A purple clay is the all-rounders. Red clay emphasizes aroma. Duan clay highlights freshness. So why do tea lovers use one pot for one tea? This is probably the question I hear most often. Well, why can't I use one Zisha teapot for everything? Technically, you can. Nothing bad will happen. But experienced tea drinkers usually don't. Here's why. Remember those microscopic pores we talked about earlier? Over time, those pores gradually absorb tiny amounts of tea oils and aromatic compounds. Very slowly, the teapot begins developing what many tea lovers call a memory. So imagine cooking garlic in a cast iron pan every day. Later, you decide to make delicate French crepes. Some of those earlier flavors may still influence the new dish. A Zisha teapot works in a similar way. As if you spend years brewing rich pu'er tea in one pot, then suddenly switch to delicate green tea, some of the stronger aroma may still influence the lighter tea. That's why many enthusiasts dedicate one teapot to one family of teas. The one for oolongs, the one for pu'er, the one for black tea. Now this isn't a strict rule. It's simply the best way to preserve each tea's unique character. Why can a Zisha teapot cost hundreds of thousands of dollars? Now let's answer the question everyone is curious about. Why would anyone pay luxury car prices for such a small teapot? Well, the answer comes down to three things. First, rarity. A high-quality original Yixing ore is limited. The best mining areas are heavily protected, and many are no longer actively mined. A great material is becoming increasingly difficult to obtain. The second, craftsmanship. A truly handmade Zisha teapot isn't produced on an assembly line. Every curve, every angle, every lid, every spout, every handle must fit together perfectly. Experienced masters may spend days or even weeks creating a single exceptional piece. That level of precision simply can't be mass-produced. A third, artistic value. The finest Zisha teapots are collected the same way people collect paintings, sculptures, or handcrafted watches. Each reflects the individual style of its maker. Each is unique. As respected artists become more famous, their works often become more valuable over time. But here's something important. An expensive teapot is not automatically a better teapot for everyday tea drinking. The collectors and daily tea drinkers often have completely different goals. For most people, a well-made authentic Zisha teapot with good clay and comfortable usability is all you need. Well, the best teapot isn't necessarily the most expensive one. It's the one you'll actually enjoy using. A common misconceptions about Zisha. Well, let's clear up a few myths. The first, darker color doesn't automatically mean higher quality. The second, older doesn't always mean better. A third, expensive doesn't always mean authentic. The real value comes from genuine Yixing clay, careful craftsmanship, and how well the teapot performs when brewing tea. Always focus on quality before price. A live brewing demonstration. Now let's see everything we've talked about in action. As I'm going to brew an oolong tea using this authentic Yixing purple clay teapot. As the hot water goes in, notice how evenly the teapot warms up. Though the heat spreads gradually through the clay. Now take a look at the tea. Though the liquor is bright and clear. Though the aroma is rich and layered. One thing many tea drinkers notice is how balanced the tea tastes. The clay doesn't add flavor to the tea. Instead, it helps create a more stable brewing environment that allows the tea's natural character to shine. That's why so many tea lovers continue using Zisha after trying it for the first time. It isn't about tradition alone. Oh, it's about the experiences. A great Zisha teapot combines geology, craftsmanship, history, and everyday enjoyment into one simple object. And that's exactly why, after more than 500 years, people around the world are still fascinated by these remarkable little teapots. If you have any questions about Zisha, leave them in the comments. Why does tea have so many rules? Before we start today, I want to ask you a really interesting question. Have you ever watched a traditional Chinese tea ceremony and thought, well, wait, why are there so many steps? Why do they pour only a little tea? Why are the cups so tiny? Why don't they just fill the cup completely? Why do they smell the tea before drinking? Why do they keep changing the water instead of leaving the tea leaves inside? For many people in the Western world, tea is simple. You wake up in the mornings, make some coffee or tea, maybe put a tea bag into hot water, add milk or sugar, and you're ready to go. Oh, it's convenient. It's a casual. It's part of daily life. And honestly, there is nothing wrong with that. But when people first see traditional Chinese tea culture, they often feel like, "Oh, wow, this looks beautiful, but isn't it a little too complicated?" So today, we're going to answer that question. Is Chinese tea culture really complicated? Or does every single little detail actually have a reason behind it? All because here's the thing. A traditional Chinese tea is not about making tea difficult. It's about understanding tea better. Every movement, every tool, every small rule comes from hundreds, sometimes thousands of years of experience. It comes from the three things. Science, social manners, and a philosophy about how people enjoy life. So today, we're going to break down the hidden meaning behind these famous tea habits. And I want everyone watching right now to join me. Type one word in the chats. Do you think traditional tea culture is complicated or elegant? I want to see your opinion before we start. It's because I promise you, by the end of this live, you might completely change the way you look at a simple cup of tea. All right, let's start with the first question. Why do Chinese people only fill the teacup 70% full? This is probably the first thing that surprises Western visitors. When Chinese people serve tea, they usually do not fill the cup all the way to the top. Well, they leave some empty space. About 30% of the cup stays empty. And many people ask, well, why isn't more tea better? That's actually a very natural Western way of thinking. Think about a coffee shop. If you order a latte, you usually expect the cup to be full. If someone gives you a cup that is only 70% filled, you might think, well, wait, did they forget something? Well, right. Because in many Western situations, a full glass represents generosity. More drink means more value. Well, more is better. But traditional Chinese tea follows a different idea. Well, the famous concept is 7 parts tea, 3 parts space. And this small detail actually has many practical reasons. First, it is about safety. A traditional Chinese tea is often brewed with very hot water, sometimes close to boiling temperature. Imagine holding a tiny cup filled completely to the edge with extremely hot liquid. The moment you move your hand even slightly, the tea can spill. You could burn your fingers. You could spill it on the table. You could even burn your guest. Leaving some empty space makes the cup easier to hold, as it gives your hand room to move. As it makes the whole experience more comfortable. But there is another reason that is even more interesting. Well, the empty space is actually part of the tea experience. Now, tea is not just liquid. The tea has aroma, and aroma needs space. When hot water touches tea leaves, hundreds of natural fragrance compounds are released. Some teas smell floral. Some smell like honey. Some have fruity notes. Some have roasted, nutty aromas. The empty space above the tea works like a small aroma chamber. It allows those fragrances to rise and collect. When you bring the cup closer, you can smell the tea before you even drink it. If you completely fill the cup, you lose part of that experience. You don't just drink tea with your mouths. You experience tea with your eyes, your nose, your hands, and your emotions. Well, that's why the empty space matters. So next time you see someone pour tea only 70% full, remember. Well, the missing 30% is not missing. Well, that space is doing a job. Well, it protects you. Well, it protects the flavor. And it creates a better experience. A pretty interesting, right? As if this is new information for you, type a wow in the chat. Because we're just getting started. Why is a full teacup considered impolite for guests? Now, this next idea is probably the biggest cultural difference between Eastern and Western tea traditions. And I think many Western viewers will find this fascinating. There is an old Chinese saying, a full wine respects people, full tea may offend people. At first, this sounds completely opposite to Western hospitality. Because in many Western cultures, when you welcome a guest, filling their glass is a warm gesture. You want to show, you are welcome here. You have plenty. Please enjoy. That makes perfect sense. But with traditional tea, the meaning is different. Why? Because tea is usually served hot. Very hot. As if you fill someone's teacup completely, they cannot easily pick it up. They cannot comfortably drink it. They have to wait. They have to be careful. They may worry about spilling. Instead of feeling relaxed, the guest feels restricted. And hospitality is supposed to make people comfortable, not create pressure. But there is also a deeper social meaning. A completely full cup can symbolically suggest there is no space left. No room. No flexibility. And in Chinese philosophy, leaving space is considered a form of kindness. You leave space for people. You leave space for conversation. You leave space for emotions. You leave space for possibilities. Think about relationships. The strongest relationships are not the ones where people constantly push each other. They are the ones where people give each other room. The same idea appears in tea. 7 parts tea. 3 parts space. That empty space represents respect. It says, I welcome you, but I don't pressure you. Enjoy slowly. Take your time. Isn't that a beautiful idea? A tiny teacup is teaching a lesson about human relationships. And this is why traditional tea culture is so interesting. A simple action can contain a much bigger philosophy. If you think this idea is beautiful, type respect in the chat. Why are traditional Chinese tea cups so small? Alright, let's move to the next question. And this is another thing that surprises many people from the Western world. Why are Chinese teacups so tiny? When people first see traditional teacups, they often say, oh wait, that's it. Is this just one sip? Why not use a big mug? And honestly, this is a very reasonable question. Because in many Western homes, we love large cups. Big coffee mugs, travel cups, huge water bottles. We like convenience. We like having a drink that lasts a long time. So why would Chinese tea culture choose such a small cup? Well, the answer is actually very interesting. A small teacup is not about drinking less. It is about experiencing more. Well, let me explain. A high-quality tea is not like a bottle of soda where every sip tastes exactly the same. A fine tea changes. It has layers. The first thing you notice might be the aroma. maybe a floral fragrance, maybe a fresh green filling, maybe a roasted warm scent. Then when you drink it, another flavor appears. Maybe sweetnesses, maybe fruit notes, maybe a smooth texture. Then after you swallow, there is something called the aftertaste. And in Chinese tea culture, we call this the returning sweetness. It is the flavor that stays after the tea is gone. A good tea continues speaking even after the sip disappears. And that is why the cup is small. Because tea is designed for small, focused experiences. Imagine eating a very expensive dessert. Would you put the entire dessert into your mouth at once? Probably not. You would take a small bite. You would notice the texture. You would notice the flavor. You would enjoy the details. I'll tell you is the same. The small cup encourages you to slow down, to pay attention, to actually taste. A large mug changes the experience. You drink faster. The tea cools down. The aroma disappears. The delicate flavors become harder to notice. And suddenly, a beautiful tea becomes just hot water with a tea flavor. That is why professional tea drinkers prefer smaller cups. They are not trying to look fancy. They are trying to protect the flavor. There is another practical reason too. A traditional Chinese tea is often brewed multiple times. One good tea session is not just one cup. A single small pot of tea can sometimes be brewed 5, 6, even 10 times. And every infusion tastes different. The first brew might be light and fresh, while the second might become sweeter, while the third might become richer and deeper. It is almost like listening to a song several times and noticing new details every time. A big cup would hide those changes. A small cup allows you to compare each moment. So the purpose of the tiny cup is not, drink less. The purpose is, notice more. That is a completely different mindset. Let me ask everyone watching. After hearing this explanation, would you still choose a huge mug? Or would you try a small teacup next time? Type cup in the chat if you want to try the traditional way. Why shouldn't you leave tea leaves soaking in water forever? Now this next one is extremely important. Because this is probably the biggest mistake beginners make when drinking loose leaf tea. They put tea leaves into hot water, and then they just leave them there. 5 minutes, 10 minutes, sometimes even longer. And then they wonder, why does my tea taste bitter? The answer is simple. The tea is not bad. The brewing method is the problem. Let me explain what is actually happening inside your cup. The tea leaves contain many natural compounds. Some create fragrances. Some create sweetnesses. Some create body and texture. And some create bitterness. When hot water touches the leaves, these different compounds are released at different speeds. The beautiful flavors come first. The fresh aroma, the natural sweetness, the smooth texture. Those appear quickly, but the bitter compounds take longer to release, especially tannins. The tannins are natural substances found in tea that create that dry, sharp feeling in your mouth. A little bit can make tea interesting. Too much makes tea unpleasant. So if you leave the leaves sitting in hot water forever, something happens. The good flavors come out first. Then they are gone. As after that, the bitter flavors keep increasing. It is like cooking a beautiful meal and leaving it on the stove for hours. As at the beginning, everything is perfect. But if you keep going too long, the quality changes. Tea works the same way. This is why traditional tea preparation separates the tea leaves from the water after each brew. It is not a random rule. It is a way to control flavor. Our professional tea drinkers are not just making tea. They are managing the timings. They are deciding how much aroma do I want? How much sweetness? How much strength? Every infusion creates a different experience. The first infusion is usually bright and fresh. The second often becomes smoother. The third can become deeper and more complex. That is where the fun begins. A tea becomes a conversation between you and the leaves. But if you leave the leaves drowning in hot water forever, you are basically forcing the tea to release everything at once. And the result is usually bitterness. So here is a simple tip you can use immediately. If you drink loose leaf tea, don't just leave the leaves sitting there all day. Control the steeping time. Your tea will instantly taste better. If this tip helped you, type tea in the chat. Why do people smell the tea lid before drinking? Now we are coming to one of the most beautiful parts of traditional tea culture. The aroma experience. You may have seen tea drinkers lift the lid of a teapot, smell it carefully, and think, what are they doing? Is this just a performance? As actually, no. This is one of the most practical steps in tea tasting. The smell of tea tells you information before you even take a sip. When tea is brewed, the lightest and most delicate aromas rise with the steam. Those aromas often collect on the inside of the lid. The lid captures the pure fragrance of the tea. It is almost like a little treasure box of aroma. When you smell it, you can discover things immediately. Is the tea fresh? Is the fragrance natural? Does it have floral notes? Fruit notes? Roasted notes? Does it smell clean and balanced? Professional tea tasters use aroma as one of the most important ways to understand tea quality. Because flavor is not only about your tongue. A huge part of what you experience as taste actually comes from smell. Think about when you have a cold. Your nose is blocked. Suddenly food tastes boring. The flavor is still there, but you cannot fully experience it. Tea works the same way. Your nose is your first tea sensor. Well, that is why smelling before drinking matters. Well, you are preparing your brains. Your brain creates a flavor expectation. Well, then, when you drink the tea, your senses connect together. The aromas, well, the taste, well, the temperature, well, the texture, as everything becomes more noticeable. Well, without smelling first, you may only think, oh, this is tea. But when you smell first, you start noticing, wow, this has a floral sweetness. This has a honey-like feeling. This has a roasted, warm character. So the tea becomes more three-dimensional. It becomes an experience. So next time you drink tea, try this. Before taking your first sip, pause. Smell. Take a moment. Then drink. You might be surprised how much more you discover. If you want to try this next time, type aroma in the chat. Why does Chinese tea have so many rules? The hidden logic behind Chinese tea culture. Final part myth busting, cultural understanding and live closing. Alright everyone, we've talked about a lot today. We talked about why Chinese tea is poured only 70% full. Why a full teacup can actually be considered impolite. Why traditional teacups are so small. Why you shouldn't leave tea leaves soaking forever. And why experienced tea drinkers smell the tea before taking the first sip. Now I want to answer the biggest question from the beginning of this live. Is Chinese tea culture too complicated? And my answer is, not really. It only looks complicated when you don't know the reason behind it. Think about anything in life. If you don't understand something, it can seem strange. For example, imagine someone who has never seen a wine tasting before. They might ask, why are people smelling the wines? Why are they looking at the colors? Why don't they just drink it? But once you understand that wine has aroma, texture, history, and craftsmanship, the process makes sense. Tea is exactly the same. Though the small cups is the careful pouring, the smelling, the timing, the temperature. These are not random rules. They are simply ways to experience tea more deeply. Let's quickly review everything we learned today. When Chinese tea is poured 70% full, it is not because people want to give you less tea. It creates safety. It creates comfort. And it gives the aroma space to develop. When people avoid filling the cup completely for guests, it is not because they are being less generous. It represents a deeper idea. Good hospitality is not about giving someone more and more. It is about making someone feel relaxed, comfortable, or respected. When people use tiny tea cups, it is not about being fancy. It is because tea has layers. A small cup helps you slow down and discover those layers. When people separate tea leaves from water, it is not unnecessary ceremony. It is flavor control. It protects the balance between sweetness, aroma, and bitterness. And when people smell the lid or smell before drinking, it is not a performance. It is a way of activating your senses and experiencing the full character of the tea. So maybe the biggest misunderstanding is this. People think Chinese tea culture is trying to make a simple thing complicated. But actually, it is trying to make a simple thing meaningful. A cup of tea is still just a cup of tea. But the way you experience it can completely change. Different cultures, different ways to enjoy life. And I want to make something very clear. This is not about saying one culture is better than another. It is not. Eastern tea culture is better. Western tea culture is better. I know. They are simply different approaches to enjoying life. In many Western cultures, we often value speed and convenience. We love things that fit into our busy schedules. A coffee while driving, a tea while working, a drink while answering emails. And there is beauty in that. It keeps life moving. It keeps things practical. A traditional Chinese tea culture focuses on something different. It creates a small moment of peace. As a moment where you stop. While you pay attention. While you connect with another person. While you enjoy the present. Neither way is wrong. They are just different expressions of human life. One says, let's make life easier. The other says, let's make this small moment more meaningful. And honestly, I think modern life needs both. We need efficiency, but we also need moments where we slow down. Maybe that is why tea culture is becoming popular around the world. Because people today are always busy, always connected, always rushing. Sometimes we need something simple that reminds us. Slow down. Notice details. Enjoy the moment you are already living in. And maybe that is the real secret behind tea. It was never just about the drink. It was always about the experience. Final chat interaction. All right, everyone, now I want to hear from you. As after learning all of this today, do you still think Chinese tea culture is complicated? Or do you think every small detail actually has a beautiful reason behind it? Type in the chat. Complicated. Or beautiful. I want to see what you think now compared with the beginning of the live. And let me know. What surprised you the most today? Was it the 70% tea rule? The tiny cups? The aroma tasting? Or the idea that an empty space can actually represent respect? Because for me, that is one of the most fascinating parts of tea culture. A simple empty space in a cup can represent a huge life philosophy. And if today's live changed the way you look at tea, I have something really exciting coming next. In our next live session, we're going to do a complete traditional tea tasting demonstration. Not just talking about it, actually showing it. I'll show you how to prepare the tea correctly, how to pour it, how to smell the aroma, how to taste different flavor layers, and how one tea can completely change from the first cup to the fifth or sixth infusion. You'll see why tea lovers around the world spend years learning this beautiful tradition. So make sure you follow the page and turn on notifications because you don't want to miss the next session. Thank you so much for spending this time with me today. Thank you for being curious. Thank you for sharing your thoughts. And remember, a great cup of tea is not only something you drink. It is something you experience. The Zisha teapot, why tea lovers around the world are obsessed with it. More than just a teapot. Today we're talking about one of the most iconic tea tools in China, Zisha teapot. If you've ever searched for Chinese tea online, you've probably seen these small clay teapots. They don't look flashy. They aren't covered in gold or decorated with colorful patterns. Yet some collectors are willing to spend tens or even hundreds of thousands of dollars on a single teapot. So what makes them so special? Why do serious tea drinkers love them? Why is Yixing the only place in the world famous for making authentic Zisha? And does a Zisha teapot actually make tea taste better? Today, we'll answer all of those questions using history, science, and real demonstrations, without complicated terminology. By the end of this live stream, you'll understand why this small clay teapot has become one of China's greatest cultural treasures. Well, let's begin. The beginning of Zisha, the story of Gong Chun. As every great invention has a beginning. For the Zisha teapot, that story starts over 500 years ago during China's Ming Dynasty. The man most people recognize as the founder of Zisha teapots was named Gong Chun. Before his time, people already brewed tea in porcelain, metal, or ceramic vessels. They worked perfectly well, but they were simply containers. Gong Chun had a different idea. He spent time observing nature, the texture of old tree bark, weathered rocks, mountain forests, and the quiet beauty of simple things. Using local clay from Yixing, he handcrafted a teapot unlike anything people had seen before. It wasn't perfectly smooth. It wasn't heavily decorated. Instead, it felt natural, warm, and alive. People realized that a teapot could be more than something you brewed tea in. It could be a piece of art. It could reflect nature. It could even express the personality of the person who made it. That philosophy has stayed with Zisha for over 5 centuries. Even today, when people buy a handmade Zisha teapot, they're buying something that connects craftsmanship, nature, and daily life. Why only Yixing, the geological secret behind Zisha? Now here's the question almost every international tea lover asks. Why is everyone talking about Yixing? There are plenty of countries with clay. People make pottery all over the world. So why can't other places simply copy Zisha? The answer begins millions of years before humans even existed. Around 3 minerals, in proportions rarely found elsewhere. But here's what really matters. When fired at high temperatures, authentic Zisha develops an incredibly fine porous structure. Think of it like millions of microscopic air pockets throughout the clay. These tiny pores allow the teapot to breathe. Now that doesn't mean air is flowing through the pot like a sponge. Instead, these microscopic pores help regulate heat, moisture, and aroma during brewing. As a result, tea tends to stay warm longer, aromas develop more fully, and the flavor becomes smoother and more balanced. Now, this is one of the biggest reasons experienced tea drinkers love Zisha. Well, it's not magic. It's materials science. Another fascinating feature is that different layers of the Yixing Mountains produce different kinds of clay. Now, just like different layers of rock produce different gemstones, different depths create different Xisha clays. That's why you'll often hear about three classic types: a purple clay, red clay, and duan clay. Each has its own color, mineral balance, and brewing characteristics. It's because the best original ore is limited and tightly protected today, authentic Yixing clay has become increasingly valuable. You can imitate the shape of a Xisha teapot anywhere in the world. But recreating the exact geological material is another story. Well, the three classic types of Xisha clay. Let's make this a simple. As if you're shopping for your first Xisha teapot, these are the three names you'll encounter most often. A purple clay zinni. This is the classic choice. If someone says Xisha teapot, this is usually what they're talking about. Its color ranges from deep brown to dark purple. It's balanced, versatile, and works well with almost every type of tea. A black tea, a oolong tea, a pu'er, or even darker roasted teas. Because it retains heat well while allowing steady airflow, it's often recommended for beginners. If you only own one Xisha teapot, purple clay is probably the safest choice. As you continue using it over the years, the surface gradually develops a soft, natural sheen from handling and brewing tea. Now, tea lovers call this the living finish. No paint, no polish, just a time and use. Red clay Juni. The next is red clay. Its color is much brighter, often a rich reddish-orange. This clay is naturally denser than purple clay and usually has finer pores. Because of that, it heats up quickly and captures aroma exceptionally well. The tea with strong floral or fruity fragrances often performs beautifully in red clay. Many premium oolong teas are brewed this way. Authentic Juni is also much rarer than purple clay. It shrinks significantly during firing, making it much harder to produce successfully. That higher difficulty is one reason genuine Juni teapots often cost more. Duan clay's duomani. Finally, we have Duan clay. Its colors range from cream and beige to light yellow. Instead of looking polished or dramatic, it has a calm, earthy appearance. Many people love it simply because it feels warm and natural. Compared with the other two, Duan clay tends to be slightly more breathable. That makes it an excellent choice for lighter teas like green tea, white tea, or lightly oxidized oolongs. Its goal isn't to intensify flavor. It's to preserve freshness and delicacy. So here's the easiest way to remember all three. A purple clay is the all-rounders. Red clay emphasizes aroma. Now, doing clay highlights freshness. So why do tea lovers use one pot for one tea? This is probably the question I hear most often. Well, why can't I use one Zisha teapot for everything? Technically, you can. Nothing bad will happen. But experienced tea drinkers usually don't. Oh, here's why. Remember those microscopic pores we talked about earlier? Over time, those pores gradually absorb tiny amounts of tea oils and aromatic compounds. Very slowly, the teapot begins developing what many tea lovers call a memory. So imagine cooking garlic in a cast iron pan every day. Later, you decide to make delicate French crepes. Some of those earlier flavors may still influence the new dish. A Zisha teapot works in a similar way. Is if you spend years brewing rich pu'er tea in one pot, then suddenly switch to delicate green tea, some of the stronger aroma may still influence the lighter tea. That's why many enthusiasts dedicate one teapot to one family of teas. The one for oolong, the one for pu'er, the one for black tea. Now, this isn't a strict rule. It's simply the best way to preserve each tea's unique character. Why can a Zisha teapot cost hundreds of thousands of dollars? Now let's answer the question everyone is curious about. Why would anyone pay luxury car prices for such a small teapot? Well, the answer comes down to three things. First, rarity. A high-quality original Yixing ore is limited. The best mining areas are heavily protected, and many are no longer actively mined. A great material is becoming increasingly difficult to obtain. The second, craftsmanship. A truly handmade Zisha teapot isn't produced on an assembly line. Every curve, every angle, every lid, every spout, every handle must fit together perfectly. Experienced masters may spend days or even weeks creating a single exceptional piece. That level of precision simply can't be mass-produced. A third, artistic value. The finest Zisha teapots are collected the same way people collect paintings, sculptures, or handcrafted watches. Each reflects the individual style of its maker. Each is unique. As respected artists become more famous, their works often become more valuable over time. But here's something important. An expensive teapot is not automatically a better teapot for everyday tea drinking. Collectors and daily tea drinkers often have completely different goals. For most people, a well-made authentic Zisha teapot with good clay and comfortable usability is all you need. Well, the best teapot isn't necessarily the most expensive one. It's the one you'll actually enjoy using. A common misconceptions about Zisha. Well, let's clear up a few myths. The first, darker color doesn't automatically mean higher quality. The second, older doesn't always mean better. A third, expensive doesn't always mean authentic. The real value comes from genuine Yixing clay, careful craftsmanship, and how well the teapot performs when brewing tea. Always focus on quality before price. A live brewing demonstration. Now let's see everything we've talked about in action. As I'm going to brew an oolong tea using this authentic Yixing purple clay teapot. As the hot water goes in, notice how evenly the teapot warms up. Though the heat spreads gradually through the clay. Now take a look at the tea. Though the liquor is bright and clear. Though the aroma is rich and layered. One thing many tea drinkers notice is how balanced the tea tastes. The clay doesn't add flavor to the tea. Instead, it helps create a more stable brewing environment that allows the tea's natural character to shine. That's why so many tea lovers continue using Zisha after trying it for the first time. It isn't about tradition alone. Oh, it's about the experiences. A great Zisha teapot combines geology, craftsmanship, history, and everyday enjoyment into one simple object. And that's exactly why, after more than 500 years, people around the world are still fascinated by these remarkable little teapots. If you have any questions about Zisha, leave them in the comments. The Untold Stories of World Tea Culture. A journey through 6 countries and the hidden stories behind their tea traditions. Hey everyone, welcome back to the live stream. If you're new here, make sure you hit that follow button, because today we're doing something completely different. We're not just talking about tea. We're traveling around the world and discovering the hidden stories, surprising traditions, and amazing history behind the way different countries drink tea. So let me ask you something first. Who here drinks tea every single day? Drop tea in the comments if you're a tea lover. And if you're more of a coffee person, don't worry, I want to hear from you too. Drop coffee below. Let's see which team is bigger today. Because most people think tea is simple, right? It's just hot water, some leaves, maybe a little sugar or milk. But actually, a cup of tea can tell you the story of an entire country. It can tell you about the weather people live in, the history they experienced, the values they believe in, and the way they connect with family and friends. The reason Japanese people drink tea slowly and carefully. The reason Moroccans pour tea from almost 1 meter high. The reason Russians created those beautiful metal tea machines. The reason Turkish people drink tea from tiny tulip-shaped glasses. The reason Indians add milk and spices. And the reason Americans turned tea into a refreshing iced drink. And every single tradition has a story behind it. So today, we're going on a global tea journey. And I promise you, after this live, you'll never look at your tea cup the same way again. If you're ready, give me a like and let's start our journey. Japan, when tea became a spiritual art. Alright, our first destination is Japan. When many people think about Japanese tea culture, they imagine something very peaceful. A quiet room, a beautiful traditional clothing, a careful movements, a person preparing tea with complete focus. Everything feels slow, elegant, and almost like a meditation. But have you ever wondered, why? Why did Japanese people turn a simple drink into such a serious art form? Why not just drink tea casually, like grabbing a soda or coffee? Well, the answer goes back hundreds of years. In ancient Japan, tea was not something everyone drank every day. Tea was a luxury, as it was mainly enjoyed by monks, nobles, and samurai. For Buddhist monks, tea had an important purpose. They drank tea during long hours of meditation because it helped them stay awake and focused. For samurai warriors, tea became a way to calm their minds. Well, think about that. So before going into battle, a warrior needed a clear mind. They needed discipline. They needed control over their emotions. Tea became a moment of peace before facing danger. Over time, tea became connected with some of the deepest Japanese values. Harmony, respect, purity, and tranquility. Though the Japanese tea ceremony is not really about the tea itself. It's about the moment. It's about slowing down. It's about appreciating something simple. As a bowl of tea, as a quiet room, a conversation with another person. Every movement has meanings. The way the tea is prepared, the way the bowl is held, the way people bow, the way they drink. Everything represents respect. In modern life, everyone is always rushing. We're checking our phones, running to work, thinking about the next thing. But Japanese tea culture reminds people, sometimes you need to stop. Sometimes you need to enjoy one single moment. A quick question for everyone watching. Have you ever experienced a Japanese tea ceremony before? Type yes if you have. And if you haven't, would you like to try one someday? Because that's the magic of Japanese tea. It's not just something you drink. It's something you experience. Morocco, why do they pour tea from so high? Now let's travel to Morocco. This one is probably one of the most visually impressive tea traditions in the world. If you search for Moroccan tea online, you'll probably see something amazing. As a person holding a beautiful metal teapot high in the air. And pouring tea from almost 1 meter above a tiny glass cup. It looks like a performance. Almost like a magic trick. And many people ask, is this just for decoration? Are they doing it to impress people? As actually, no. There are real reasons behind this tradition. The Moroccan mint tea is one of the most important drinks in the country. It usually contains green tea, fresh mint, and sugar. The high pouring technique has been passed down through generations. The first reason is flavor. When the tea falls through the air from a high distance, it mixes with oxygen. This changes the texture and taste. The tea becomes smoother, lighter, and more refreshing. It also helps balance the stronger flavor of green tea. But the second reason is even more meaningful. It represents hospitality. In Moroccan culture, offering tea to a guest is a symbol of respect. When someone welcomes you into their home, preparing tea is a way of saying, you are important to me. You are welcome here. You are part of this moment. The person making tea shows patience, skill, and care. Well, the high, steady pour is a symbol of experience and confidence. Well, it's not just making a drink, it's creating a connection between people. That's why Moroccan tea culture is so beautiful. Though the tea is important, but the relationship around the tea is even more important. Now tell me in the comments, would you try pouring tea this way? Now, do you think it looks cool or a little scary? I personally think it's one of the most beautiful tea traditions in the world. Russia, the warm family story behind the samovar. The next stop, Russia. Now, when many people think about Russian tea culture, they immediately imagine one special object. Though this samovar, you may have seen these large, shiny metal containers. They look almost like a piece of art. But why did Russians create such a unique tea device? Why not just use a normal kettle? Well, the answer comes from the environment. Russia has some of the longest and coldest winters in the world. Hundreds of years ago, people didn't have modern heating systems. The winter meant spending a lot of time indoors. Families stayed together for long periods, and they needed warmth. The samovar was a brilliant invention. Inside the center was a tube where people could burn charcoal. This allowed the water to stay hot for hours. But the most important thing about the samovar wasn't the technology. It was the feeling. The samovar became the heart of the home. Families would sit around it. They would drink tea, tell stories, and talk about life. Share memories. During long, cold winter nights, the samovar brought people together. It wasn't just a tea machine. It was a symbol of family, a symbol of comfort, a symbol of connection. And here's another interesting tradition. Many Russians enjoy tea with sugar cubes. Instead of putting sugar directly into the tea, they bite a piece of sugar and drink tea at the same time. Different countries have different tea habits, right? That's what makes tea culture so fascinating. A quick question. Would you try tea with a sugar cube? Type try if you would. Turkey, the beautiful secret behind tulip-shaped tea glasses. Now we're heading to Turkey. And the first thing you notice about Turkish tea is not even the tea. It's the glasses. Those beautiful, small, tulip-shaped glasses. They are instantly recognizable. But why this shape? Why not use a normal mug? There are two amazing reasons. The first reason is cultural. The tulip is deeply connected with Turkish history. During the Ottoman Empire, tulips represented beauty, elegance, and prosperity. They were loved by royalty and became a symbol of Turkish culture. So creating a tea glass with a tulip shape was a way to bring beauty into everyday life. But there's also a practical reason. Look carefully at the design. The top part is wider. The bottom part is narrow. This shape is actually very smart. The wide top allows the tea to cool faster, so you can drink it comfortably. The narrow bottom helps keep the remaining tea warm for longer. It's designed perfectly for people who drink tea throughout the day. And Turkish people really do drink a lot of tea. The mornings, afternoons, the evenings, during conversations, during business meetings, during family visits. Tea is everywhere. This tiny glass is not just a cup. It's part of daily life. Honestly, isn't this design beautiful? If you love this tulip-shaped glass, send me a flower emoji. Is India the warm, spicy world of chai? Now let's travel to India. And when we talk about Indian tea, there is one word everyone knows. The chai, sweet, creamy, the warm, full of spices. But have you ever wondered, why do Indians add milk and spices instead of drinking plain black tea? The answer comes from climate, culture, and lifestyle. India has many hot and humid regions. Traditional Indian wellness practices, including Ayurveda, have influenced the way people think about food and drinks. Many people believe balance is important. So instead of drinking plain tea, people began adding ingredients like the milk, the ginger, the cardamom, the cinnamon, and cloves. These spices create a richer, warmer, more comforting drink. But there is another reason. The tea became part of everyday working life. For farmers, workers, and people spending long hours outside, a simple cup of tea was not always enough. A chai provided energy. It was filling. It was comforting. It became a daily ritual. Today, Indian chai has traveled all over the world. You can find chai in cafes from New York to London to Sydney. But real chai is more than a drink. It represents Indian warmth, Indian creativity, Indian hospitality. It's a whole lifestyle inside one cup. Who here loves chai? Type chai lover in the comments. As America, why iced tea became a national favorite. And finally, let's talk about the United States. America's relationship with tea is very different from many other countries. Many cultures focus on slow tea ceremonies. Americans created something different. Iced tea, especially sweet iced tea. So why did Americans become so obsessed with cold tea? There are a few reasons. First, lifestyle. As American culture often moves quickly. People are working, driving, traveling, exercising, going from one place to another. Iced tea fits perfectly into this lifestyle. It's easy, refreshing, and portable. You can take it anywhere. The second reason is climate. Many parts of America have hot summers. And in the southern states especially, iced sweet tea became a perfect drink for hot weather. People working outside needed something refreshing and energizing. And the third reason is cultural style. Many traditional tea cultures focus on ceremony. American tea culture focuses more on comfort and convenience. It's a casual. It's a social. It's something you enjoy at a barbecue, on a road trip, or sitting outside with friends. That's why iced tea became such a big part of American life. It represents freedom, relaxation, and enjoying simple moments. So tell me, how many people here drink iced tea every week? Drop iced in the comments. A final thoughts, tea is never just tea. Wow, everyone's. We just traveled across 6 different countries and discovered something amazing. Tea is never just tea. Japanese tea represents peace and mindfulness. Moroccan tea represents hospitality and connection. Russian tea represents warmth and family. Turkish tea represents beauty and tradition. Indian chai represents energy and comfort. American iced tea represents freedom and casual enjoyment. And every cup carries a story. A story about history. A story about people. A story about the environment they live in. A story about what they value. That's why tea culture is so fascinating. Because when you hold a cup of tea, you're not just holding a drink. You're holding a piece of someone's culture. Now I want to know from you, which country's tea culture surprised you the most? Japan, Morocco, Russia, Turkey, India, or Americas. Tell me in the comments. I'm reading your answers. And if you enjoyed this global culture journey, make sure you follow the account. We'll explore more hidden stories behind food, drinks, traditions, and everyday things from around the world. Thank you so much for joining me today. I'll keep drinking tea. I'll keep exploring the world. And I'll see you in the next live. Bye, everyone.